The poor girl comforted a lost boy crying in the rain and brought him home. Hours later, dozens of supercars arrived. It was his billionaire father desperately searching for him. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The rain hammered down that October evening in Meadowbrook, a small town outside Boston. 7-year-old Emma Miller pressed her face against the cracked window of their tiny rental house, watching the storm unleash its fury on their quiet street. "Emma, honey, come away from there," her mother Sarah called from the kitchen, heating their modest dinner of canned soup. Sarah worked 2 jobs, mornings at the diner, evenings cleaning at the hospital, but it was never quite enough. Still, she made sure Emma always had warmth and love. But Emma wasn't listening. Through the rain, she spotted something that made her freeze. A little boy, maybe 5 years old, stumbling down the sidewalk, soaking wet, crying so hard his body shook. He wore expensive clothes, a navy jacket, leather shoes. But he was alone in this terrible storm. "Mama, there's a little boy outside!" Emma shouted, already running for the door. Before Sarah could stop her, Emma burst into the rain. The icy water hit her hard, but she didn't care. The boy had collapsed by their rusty gate, face buried in his hands. "Hey, it's okay!" Emma knelt beside him, touching his shoulder. His green eyes were wide with terror. "Don't cry, you're safe now." "I can't find my daddy," he sobbed. "I was with my nanny at the park. I saw a puppy and followed it, and now I'm lost." Emma's heart ached. She'd lost her own father to cancer 2 years ago. She knew what fear felt like. "Come with me. My mama will help you." She pulled him through the rain to their door, where Sarah stood shocked, grabbing towels. "Oh, my Lord, Emma." Sarah wrapped them both up. "What's your name, sweetheart?" she asked the boy gently. "To Tommy. Tommy Harrington." The name meant nothing to them, but his clothes looked expensive. Sarah heated extra soup and made a peanut butter sandwich. The boy ate hungrily, while Emma wrapped him in her special blanket, the one with rabbits that her father had given her. "Don't worry," Emma said, holding Tommy's hand. "My mama is the best. This blanket keeps away bad dreams." Tommy looked at her with complete trust. "Are you an angel?" Emma giggled. "No, silly. I'm just Emma." For 2 hours, Emma stayed with Tommy, showing him her books, telling stories, making him laugh. Sarah watched from the kitchen, her heart swelling with pride, even as she worried about his frantic family. Then they heard it. Engines. Many powerful, expensive engines. Emma ran to the window and gasped. Coming down their humble street was a convoy of black SUVs and luxury cars. Mercedes, Bentleys, at least a dozen vehicles, headlights cutting through the rain. "Mama, come look!" The cars stopped right in front of their house. Men in suits emerged. Then one man stood out from all the rest. Tall, early 30s, in a soaking business suit, dark hair plastered to his forehead, face twisted with desperate fear. He was screaming Tommy's name. Sarah opened the door. The man's eyes locked onto them. "Tommy!" he screamed. "Daddy!" Tommy broke free and ran. The man flew up their steps, fell to his knees, crushed Tommy in his arms. He sobbed, this powerful man crying like a child as he held his son, checking for injuries, kissing his hair. "Oh God, oh thank God! Tommy, I thought I'd lost you forever." Emma watched with tears in her eyes. The man finally looked up at her and Sarah, gratitude overwhelming his features. "You saved my son." More vehicles arrived, news vans, camera crews. The man stood, still holding Tommy, studying their humble house, Emma's faded pajamas, Sarah's worn uniform, the peeling paint, the cracked window, the rusty gate. Something flickered in his face. A decision. "What's your name?" he asked Emma gently. "Emma Miller, sir. Emma Miller." He said it like a vow. "My name is Richard Harrington. You've just saved the most precious thing in my world." His eyes intensified. "And I promise you, Emma Miller, your life is never going to be the same again." As he carried Tommy to the waiting cars, he turned back, locking eyes with Sarah. "I'll be back tomorrow. We have a lot to talk about." Then they vanished, leaving Emma and Sarah in their doorway, staring at the empty street that would never look the same. Emma didn't know it yet, but that simple act of kindness had just set in motion events that would change everything about her world. But for now, as Sarah hugged her tight, Emma could only think of Tommy's last words. "Will I see you again, Emma?" And Richard Harrington's final glance, which promised that yes, she most certainly would. The next morning arrived with brilliant sunshine, as if the storm had never happened. Emma sat at their small kitchen table, pushing cold cereal around her bowl, unable to stop thinking about Tommy and his father. "Mama, do you think he really meant it? About coming back?" Emma asked. Sarah poured herself coffee in a chipped mug, her face thoughtful. "Honey, rich people like that. They live in a different world. They say things in the moment." She touched Emma's cheek gently. "But what you did was beautiful, no matter what happens next." At exactly 10 o'clock, 3 black SUVs pulled up outside. Emma's heart jumped. Richard Harrington stepped out, but he looked different in the daylight. Clean-shaven, wearing a crisp suit that probably cost more than their yearly rent, he still had that same intensity in his eyes. Tommy bounced beside him, holding his hand, grinning when he saw Emma through the window. Sarah opened the door nervously. "Mr. Harrington, please, call me Richard." His voice was warm, but carried an authority that made Sarah stand straighter. "May I come in?" They sat in the tiny living room, Richard looking oddly large on their worn couch. Tommy immediately ran to Emma, hugging her tight. "I told Daddy everything, how you saved me and gave me your special blanket." Richard's eyes swept over their home, taking in every detail with an expression Emma couldn't read. "Mrs. Miller, I want to be very direct with you. What your daughter did last night. Most people would have looked the other way, but Emma didn't hesitate. She has something rare." He paused. "I'd like to repay that kindness." Sarah stiffened. "We don't need charity, Mr. Harrington. It's not charity, it's gratitude." Richard pulled out a folder. "I've made some arrangements. First, I'd like to set up a trust fund for Emma's education, full ride through college, any school she wants." Sarah's coffee cup trembled in her hand. That's too much." "Second, I've paid off the remaining balance on this house and transferred the deed to your name. It's yours, free and clear." Sarah stood up abruptly. "No, absolutely not. I don't know what kind of game this is." "Mama?" Emma's small voice cut through the tension. "Tommy wants to be my friend. Is that okay?" The room fell silent. Richard looked at his son, then at Emma, and something softened in his face. "Mrs. Miller, I lost my wife 3 years ago. Tommy's mother. Cancer. Since then, it's been nannies and bodyguards and a big empty house." His voice cracked slightly. "Last night, watching your daughter comfort my son, seeing her give him her own blanket, I saw something I haven't seen in years, genuine human kindness with no agenda." Sarah sat back down slowly, tears in her eyes. "I'm not trying to buy you," Richard continued quietly. "I'm trying to thank you, and maybe—" He glanced at Tommy and Emma, now looking at books together. "Maybe give both our children something neither of them has had in a while. Real friendship." Sarah wiped her eyes. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it." Richard stood. "There's one more thing. My company is opening a community center here in Meadowbrook. I'd like to hire you as the director, full benefits, salary 3 times what you're making now." "Why?" Sarah whispered. "Why are you doing all this?" Richard looked at Emma, who was making Tommy laugh with a silly voice. Because your daughter reminded me that there's still good in this world, and because—" He turned back to Sarah, his eyes haunted. "I know what it's like to lose everything. If I can prevent that for someone else, especially someone who saved my son, then maybe I can sleep at night." As Richard and Tommy prepared to leave, Tommy hugged Emma goodbye. "Daddy says you can come visit our house. It has a pool and horses and everything." After they left, Sarah sat on the couch, staring at the folder of documents. Emma climbed beside her. "Mama, is it okay that I like Tommy?" Sarah pulled her daughter close. "Oh, honey, yes. But I'm scared." "Why?" "Because people like them. They can give you the world, but they can also take it away just as fast." She kissed Emma's head. "And I don't know if I can protect you from that." Outside, in his SUV, Richard made a phone call. "It's done. Keep eyes on them 24/7. I want to know if anyone so much as looks at them wrong." He paused, watching Emma wave from the window. "And Marcus, run a complete background check. I need to know everything about Sarah Miller." Everything. Something in his tone suggested this was about more than just gratitude. 3 weeks later, Emma stood in front of Westbrook Academy, her new private school, feeling like she'd landed on another planet. The building looked like a castle, with perfectly manicured lawns and students arriving in expensive cars. "You sure about this, baby?" Sarah asked, gripping the steering wheel of their old Honda, which now sat in the parking lot next to Mercedes and BMWs. Emma nodded, trying to be brave, but her new uniform felt stiff and her backpack too heavy with books they'd gotten yesterday. Inside, everything sparkled. The hallways had marble floors. The classrooms had smartboards and iPads for every student. Emma's old school had leaky ceilings and 20-year-old textbooks. "You must be Emma!" A cheerful teacher, Mrs. Patterson, greeted her. "We're so excited to have you. Tommy has been talking about you non-stop." Tommy appeared, grinning, pulling Emma to his desk. "Sit with me. I told everyone you're my best friend." But as Emma looked around, she saw the other children staring. Their clothes were designer brands. Their shoes weren't scuffed. They whispered to each other, eyes darting between Emma and Tommy. A blonde girl named Madison approached during recess. "So you're the charity case Tommy's dad took in." Emma's cheeks burned. "I'm not a charity case. I'm Tommy's friend." "Sure you are." Madison's smile was sharp. "My daddy says your mum was poor and that Mr. Harrington felt sorry for you. That's why you're here." Tommy stepped between them, his little face fierce. "Emma saved my life. She's the bravest person I know. You're just jealous because you've never done anything nice for anybody." Madison stomped away, but her words stung. Throughout the day, Emma felt the weight of being different. The other kids talked about ski trips and summer homes in the Hamptons. Emma had never left Massachusetts. At lunch, Tommy stayed glued to her side, chattering about everything, trying to make her smile. "Don't listen to Madison. She's mean to everyone. My daddy says people who are mean are usually just unhappy inside." After school, Richard himself picked them up. It was unusual. Normally a driver came, but he wanted to see how Emma's first day went. "So?" he asked, glancing in the rear-view mirror. "How was it?" "It was different," Emma said carefully. Richard's eyes met hers in the mirror. Something in his expression said he understood perfectly. "Different isn't bad, Emma. Different is often where the strongest people come from." He drove them to an ice cream shop, insisting on celebrating Emma's first day. As they sat in the booth, Richard in his expensive suit, Tommy bouncing with excitement, Emma quiet and thoughtful, people stared. "Emma," Richard said gently, sliding a sundae across to her, "I know this is hard. New school, new people, feeling like you don't fit in." He paused. "But here's what I've learned. The people who matter don't care where you come from. They care about who you are, and who you are is someone who runs into the rain to save a scared little boy." Emma looked up at him, and for the first time she saw past the expensive clothes and powerful presence. She saw someone who was also lonely, also trying to figure out how to be happy again. "Mr. Harrington, why are you really doing all this? Mama says rich people don't usually care about people like us." Richard was quiet for a long moment. "Your mama's not wrong. Most don't. But Emma, 3 years ago, when my wife died, I lost my way. I became someone who only cared about money and power." He looked at Tommy. "Then I almost lost my son, and a 7-year-old girl reminded me what really matters." His voice dropped. "You gave me back something I thought was gone forever. Hope." On the drive home, Emma felt a strange mixture of emotions. Fear of the new school, warmth from Richard's words, confusion about where she fit in this strange new world. What she didn't see was Richard making another phone call after dropping her off. "I need you to look into Madison Crawford's father. See what he's been saying around town." His voice turned cold. "Nobody makes Emma feel small. Not on my watch." And in that moment, watching Emma wave goodbye from her porch, Richard Harrington made a decision that would change everything. He wasn't just going to help Emma navigate his world. He was going to make sure she conquered it. But some doors once opened can never be closed again. By November, the whispers in Meadowbrook had grown into a roar. Sarah felt it every time she walked into town. The stares, the hushed conversations that stopped when she passed, the way old neighbors suddenly avoided eye contact. "I'm telling you, it's not natural," Mrs. Henderson said at the grocery store, loud enough for Sarah to hear. "A man that rich doesn't just hand out money for nothing. There's always strings attached." Sarah's hand shook as she loaded groceries into her cart. She'd heard worse. People said she'd entrapped Richard, that she'd planned the whole thing, that she was using Emma to get close to a billionaire. The cruelty was breathtaking. Emma felt it too. At school, the division was clear. Team Tommy, the few kids brave enough to be nice to her, and Team Madison, who made sure Emma knew she didn't belong. Notes appeared in her locker. "Gold digger's daughter." Someone put gum in her backpack. Her homework went missing 3 times, but Emma didn't tell her mother. Sarah already looked so tired, so worried. Instead, Emma poured herself into her friendship with Tommy, who remained fiercely loyal. One afternoon, Richard appeared at their door unannounced, his face grim. "Mrs. Miller, we need to talk." Inside, he pulled out his phone, showing Sarah screenshots of social media posts. Local parents had created a group chat discussing the Miller situation. The messages were vicious, calling Sarah an opportunist, accusing her of using her daughter, speculating about her relationship with Richard. "This is disgusting," Sarah whispered, her face pale. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe Emma should go back to her old school." "No." Richard's voice was steel. "That's exactly what they want, for you to feel ashamed of accepting help, to crawl back into the box society built for you." "But Emma is suffering. Kids are mean to her. The whole town thinks I'm some kind of... "They're jealous," Richard said flatly. "You had nothing, and now you have opportunity. People hate that. It challenges their comfortable narratives about how the world works." Sarah stood, hugging herself. "I just wanted to give Emma a better life. Not this nightmare." Richard softened. "Sarah." It was the first time he'd used her first name. "Look at me. I grew up in foster care. My last foster father told me I'd never amount to anything. When I made my first million, people said I'd cheated. When I made my first billion, they said I'd sold my soul." He stepped closer. "Success makes people uncomfortable. Kindness being rewarded makes them uncomfortable, because it means they can't justify their own inaction." Before Sarah could respond, Emma came home from school, her face tear-stained. She'd tried to hide it, but Sarah knew immediately. "Baby, what happened?" "Nothing, Mama, I'm fine." But Tommy had followed her in, his little face furious. Madison pushed her. Said Emma's mom is a gold digger and that we're only friends because my daddy pays her to be nice to me. Sarah's heart shattered. Richard's expression darkened dangerously. Emma, come here, Richard said gently. When she approached, he knelt to her level. Is that what Madison said? Emma nodded, tears spilling over. And what did you do? I told her she was wrong, that I like Tommy because he's kind and funny and brave, not because of money. Richard smiled, but it was edged with something fierce. That's my girl. Emma, listen to me carefully. People like Madison, they peak in high school. But people like you, you're just getting started. He stood, pulling out his phone. I'm going to make some calls. Madison's father works in real estate, doesn't he? Richard, don't, Sarah warned. Don't make this worse. Worse? Richard's laugh was cold. Sarah, they pushed a 7-year-old child. They publicly humiliated you. I've been patient, but patience has its limits. That night, as Emma slept, Sarah and Richard sat on her front porch, an unusual sight, the billionaire and the former cleaning lady talking in the darkness. Why do you care so much? Sarah asked quietly. Really, I need to understand. Richard was silent for a long time. Because when I was 8, I was in a foster home where the other kids bullied me mercilessly, and the foster parents, they just let it happen. No one protected me. He turned to her, and in the porch light, she saw old pain in his eyes. I swore if I ever had the power to protect someone being treated like that, I would. No child should feel worthless because of circumstances beyond their control. Sarah felt something shift in her chest. You really mean that? Every word. He paused. But Sarah, I need you to trust me. This is going to get harder before it gets better. Can you do that? Sarah thought about Emma's tear-stained face, about the cruelty of small-minded people, about the extraordinary man sitting beside her who seemed determined to fight battles on their behalf. I don't have much choice, do I? You always have a choice, Richard said. You can walk away, go back to how things were. Or you can stand tall and show this town that Emma Miller deserves every good thing coming her way. As Richard left that night, Sarah watched his taillights disappear. She didn't know it yet, but Richard had already set something in motion. By morning, Madison's father would receive a call that his commercial loan, held by one of Richard's subsidiary banks, was being called in early. Not illegal, just inconvenient. Richard Harrington didn't make idle threats, and anyone who hurt Emma or Sarah was about to learn that the hard way. But sometimes protection comes with a price neither party expected to pay. December brought snow and something else. A shift in the dynamics at Westbrook Academy. Madison's father, suddenly dealing with financial pressure, had pulled her aside with harsh words about not antagonizing the Harringtons. Madison's bullying stopped, but so did her entire social circle. They avoided Emma and Tommy entirely now, which was better than cruelty, but felt hollow somehow. Emma spent more time at the Harrington estate, a sprawling mansion in the countryside that made her feel like she'd stepped into a fairy tale. But what struck her most wasn't the pool or the horses or the movie theatre. It was how lonely it all felt. Tommy's nanny, Carol, was kind but professional. The housekeepers were quiet. The halls echoed. Tommy's bedroom was bigger than Emma's entire house, filled with every toy imaginable, but Emma often found him sitting alone, just waiting for his father to come home from work. "Don't you have other friends you play with?" Emma asked one Saturday afternoon as they built a fort in the living room. Tommy shrugged. "Kids come over sometimes for play dates that Daddy arranges, but they're not real friends. They just want to play with my stuff." He looked at her seriously. "You're different. You liked me when I was just a scared lost boy." Emma hugged him. "You're my best friend, Tommy, forever." Richard came home early that day, surprising them both. He'd been doing that more often lately, leaving work to have dinner with Tommy, asking Emma to stay, driving her home himself rather than sending a driver. Sarah had noticed too, though she tried not to read too much into it. "Daddy, look at our fort!" Tommy dragged Richard over to see their blanket creation. Richard actually got down on his hands and knees and crawled inside, making both children giggle. Emma watched him, this powerful man playing make-believe, and saw something that took her breath away. Richard Harrington was as lonely as his son. That evening, while Tommy was upstairs getting ready for bed, Richard and Emma stood in his enormous kitchen. He was making hot chocolate, not asking the cook, doing it himself. "Emma, can I ask you something?" Richard handed her a mug. "Do you remember your father?" Emma was surprised by the question. "Yes, sir. He died when I was 5. He had cancer. He used to read me stories every night and make funny voices." Richard nodded slowly. "My wife, Tommy's mother, Grace, she died when Tommy was 2. Cancer as well." His voice was thick. "He barely remembers her. Sometimes I wonder if I'm enough for him." "You're a great dad," Emma said earnestly. "Tommy talks about you all the time. He says you're the smartest, strongest person in the world." Richard's eyes glistened. "He said that?" "Yep, and he's right." Emma took a sip of hot chocolate. "Mr. Harrington, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Why don't you have a girlfriend? You're nice and handsome and you make really good hot chocolate." Richard burst out laughing, a real, genuine laugh that Emma had never heard from him before. "Well, that's direct." He sobered. "I suppose I haven't met anyone who felt right. After Grace, I threw myself into work, turned off that part of my heart." He looked at Emma curiously. "Why do you ask?" "Because my mama is lonely too. She tries to hide it, but sometimes I hear her crying at night. She works so hard and takes care of me, but nobody takes care of her." Something flickered across Richard's face, an emotion Emma couldn't name. "Your mother is an extraordinary woman, Emma." "I know," Emma said proudly. "She's the best." When Richard drove Emma home that night, he walked her to the door. Sarah opened it, surprised to see him. "Richard, you didn't have to—" "Sarah, do you have a minute?" Richard's voice was careful. "There's something I'd like to discuss." Inside, with Emma sent upstairs to get ready for bed, Richard and Sarah sat across from each other. The tension was different now, not uncomfortable, but charged with something unnamed. "I want to take you and Emma to dinner. A proper dinner, at Giovanni's downtown." Sarah blinked. That's a very expensive restaurant." "I'm aware." "Thursday night, 7 o'clock. Emma too. Consider it a thank you for all the time she spends entertaining Tommy." "Richard, we've had this conversation. You don't owe us." "It's not about owing," Richard interrupted gently. "Sarah, I enjoy spending time with your daughter." And he paused, something vulnerable in his expression. "I'd like to spend time with you too, get to know the woman who raised someone as remarkable as Emma." Sarah's heart hammered. Are you asking us on a date?" "I'm asking you to dinner," Richard said carefully. "What it becomes beyond that, I think we should just see." After Richard left, Sarah sat in stunned silence. Emma crept downstairs, eyes wide. "Mama, is Mr. Harrington your boyfriend now?" "No, Emma, it's just dinner." "But you like him," Emma said matter-of-factly. "You smile different when he's around, and he looks at you like Daddy used to look at you." Sarah pulled Emma onto her lap. "Honey, Mr. Harrington and we're very different people." "So you and Daddy were different too. He liked sports and you liked books, but you loved each other anyway." From the mouths of babes. Sarah hugged her daughter close, her mind whirling. She'd felt it too, those moments when Richard's eyes lingered, when their hands accidentally touched, when the air seemed to crackle with possibility. But falling for Richard Harrington was dangerous. He lived in a world of privilege and power. She was still just Sarah Miller from Meadowbrook, the girl who'd grown up in a trailer park and clawed her way to a GED. Could someone like him really see someone like her as an equal? Thursday would tell. But Sarah had no idea that this dinner would change everything, or that someone was watching, waiting for the perfect moment to destroy everything Richard was building. Giovanni's restaurant was everything Sarah feared and more. Crystal chandeliers, waiters in tuxedos, and a wine list thicker than her high school yearbook. She'd worn her best dress, the navy one she saved for interviews, and still felt underdressed. But Richard's face when he saw her, that made every insecurity fade. "You look beautiful," he said simply, and the way he said it, with quiet reverence, made Sarah believe it. Emma wore a new dress Richard had sent over, soft pink with ribbons, and she couldn't stop spinning in it. Tommy was beside her, both children giggling as they raced to the table. Dinner was surprisingly comfortable. Richard had requested a private room, away from prying eyes, where they could just be themselves. He asked Sarah about her childhood, her dreams, her favorite books. She found herself talking freely, laughing at his stories about disastrous business meetings, and the time Tommy had convinced him to dress as a pirate for career day. The children ate quickly, and then asked permission to look at the fish tank in the corner, leaving Sarah and Richard alone with coffee. "Can I tell you something?" Richard said, his fingers tracing the rim of his cup. "Something I haven't told anyone." "Of course. When Grace died, I made a promise to myself. No distractions, no relationships, nothing that would take my focus away from Tommy and the business. I built walls, Sarah, high ones." He looked up, his eyes intense. "Then a 7-year-old girl with a blanket full of rabbits kicked those walls down without even trying." Sarah's breath caught. "Richard, I'm not finished." "Deb," he reached across the table, not quite touching her hand, but close. "You and Emma, you've brought something into our lives I didn't think was possible anymore. Light, laughter, purpose beyond profit margins." He paused. "I'm not good at this. I'm probably moving too fast. But I need you to know that when I look at you, I don't see a cleaning lady from Meadowbrook. I see a woman who raised an angel while working 2 jobs. I see strength and grace and beauty that has nothing to do with money or status." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "You barely know me. Then let me know you. Really know you." Richard's voice was gentle but certain. "I'm not asking for promises or commitments. I'm just asking for a chance." Sarah was about to respond when Emma's voice interrupted. "Mama! Mr. Harrington, come see this fish, it's huge!" The moment broke, but something had been said. Something had shifted. As they walked to the car, Tommy holding Richard's hand and Emma holding Sarah's, they looked like a family. Several people in the restaurant noticed, whispering, taking pictures. Sarah didn't see the woman in the corner, her face twisted with rage, her phone capturing every moment. The next morning, Sarah's phone exploded with notifications. Someone had posted photos from the restaurant on social media with vicious captions. "Local gold digger secures billionaire, a masterclass in manipulation." The post had thousands of shares within hours, but worse was the comment section. Hundreds of people, strangers, were dissecting Sarah's life, her choices, even her appearance. "She's using that little girl as bait. Look at her cheap dress, trying to look innocent. Harrington's just another rich fool." Sarah sat on her bed, phone shaking in her hands, as Emma got ready for school. She hadn't heard Richard's car pull up, hadn't heard him let himself in with the key she'd given him for emergencies. "Sarah." Richard's voice was tight with fury. He'd seen the posts. She looked up, tears streaming down her face. "I can't do this. Richard, I can't. Look at what they're saying. They're tearing me apart." Richard knelt in front of her, taking her phone and setting it aside. "Listen to me very carefully. Those people, they don't matter. Their opinions mean nothing. They matter to Emma. What if the kids at school see this? What if they—" "I'm handling it." Richard's voice turned dangerous. "I have lawyers sending cease and desist letters to every person who shared that post. The original account is being traced, and if I find out who's behind this—" He didn't finish the threat. "You can't fight the whole world for me," Sarah whispered. "Watch me." Richard cupped her face. "Sarah, I told you this would get harder. They're attacking because they're scared. Scared that class lines aren't as fixed as they thought. Scared that a good woman can be seen and valued regardless of her bank account." His thumbs wiped away her tears. "Please don't give up. Not now. Not when we're just beginning." Emma appeared in the doorway, her face stricken. "Mama, why are you crying? Did Mr. Harrington make you sad?" "No, baby. I'm okay." But Emma looked at Richard with surprising fierceness. "You have to protect her, like she protected Tommy. Promise." Richard looked at this 7-year-old girl, seeing not a child but a warrior. "I promise, Emma, I will protect both of you with everything I have." As he left to make phone calls, summoning his legal team, Sarah realized something that terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. She was falling for Richard Harrington. Not for his money or power, but for the man who crawled into blanket forts, who made hot chocolate, who looked at her like she was precious. But she also realized something else. Someone out there wanted to destroy this budding relationship, and they were just getting started. That evening, Richard's head of security delivered news that made his blood run cold. The woman behind the social media attack was Victoria Ashford, Grace's younger sister, Tommy's aunt, and she had just filed for emergency custody of Tommy, claiming Richard was an unfit father who'd chosen a gold digger over his own son's well-being. The real battle was about to begin. The custody petition hit like a bomb. Victoria Ashford's lawyers painted Richard as obsessed with Sarah, neglecting Tommy's needs. They had photos, timestamps, testimonies from staff secretly on Victoria's payroll. Richard's lawyer, Marcus Chen, was blunt. "This is bad. She's claiming you're prioritizing romance over Tommy. You need to distance yourself from Sarah immediately." "No. Richard, they'll use this to take Tommy. Is this woman worth losing your son?" Richard drove to Sarah's house that evening, his heart heavy. She saw his face and knew. "You're ending this," she said quietly. Not ending. Pausing. Richard stepped inside. "Victoria is using us against me. Every moment together she's documenting, twisting into evidence I'm unfit. So she wins." Sarah wrapped her arms around herself. "She makes me the villain and we surrender. Until the custody hearing is over, go, protect your son." Sarah's voice cracked. "But Richard, once you walk out that door, once you hide me like I'm shameful, it's over." "Emma!" Sarah called upstairs. "Say goodbye to Mr. Harrington. He won't be visiting anymore." Emma appeared, confused. Richard left, seeing Emma's hand pressed against the window. At school, Madison approached Emma with false sympathy. "I heard your mom got dumped. Gold diggers never win." Emma didn't respond. Inside, her heart was breaking. That night, Tommy called crying. "Daddy says no more playdates. Aunt Victoria's trying to take me. I'm scared." "Your daddy will fight for you," Emma said fiercely. "When this is over, we'll be together again, I promise." Victoria reviewed her strategy with cold satisfaction. She didn't really want Tommy. She wanted revenge. Revenge for years of playing second to Grace, the perfect sister with the perfect life. Destroying Richard's happiness was her payback. The custody hearing was set for 2 weeks. The battle lines were drawn. Sarah threw herself into community center work, trying to forget the ache in her chest. Emma had grown quiet, withdrawn. She and Tommy sat together at school every day, united in sadness. Then Dorothy Freeman, Grace's former housekeeper, visited Sarah. "I need to tell you something about Victoria, something I should have said years ago." Dorothy's hands trembled. "Grace gave me this before she died, made me promise to give it to Richard only if Victoria ever tried to hurt Tommy." Inside the envelope were psychiatric evaluations, police reports from Victoria's college years, drug use evidence. even a restraining order from an ex claiming Victoria tried to poison him. The pattern was clear. Victoria was dangerous. Grace knew, Dorothy whispered. Victoria blamed her for telling their father the truth. When Grace died, Victoria saw her chance. Sarah called Richard immediately. They met at a park after dark. When he read the documents, his face went white. "This changes everything," Sarah said. "Victoria isn't just vindictive, she's dangerous. If Grace knew this, why didn't she tell me? Maybe she was protecting you." Sarah touched his arm. "Use this. Show the judge who Victoria really is." Richard pulled her close. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have walked away. We're stronger together." "I love you," he whispered. "I love you too," Sarah admitted. They kissed under the stars, while Emma and Tommy looked at the same moon, hoping the adults would figure it out. Marcus reviewed Dorothy's documents. "This is explosive. Victoria's case collapses, but Richard, this will destroy her publicly. Are you prepared? She tried to take my son with lies. She doesn't get mercy." But that night, Richard received a call that made his blood run cold. Victoria had discovered Dorothy's betrayal and was threatening to expose Sarah's past. "Meet me tomorrow, alone, or I release information about your precious Sarah that will destroy her. Your choice." Victoria wasn't just vindictive, she was ruthless. The real battle was just beginning. Victoria slid a folder across the desk. Inside were police reports about Sarah, an arrest 15 years ago for theft. Charges had been dropped when the real thief confessed, but the record remained. "The narrative is perfect," Victoria smiled. "Former thief targets wealthy man through innocent child. Even cleared, the optics are delicious. Sarah will be dragged through every tabloid. Little Emma. Imagine what kids will say. What do you want? Drop Sarah publicly. Make a statement it was a mistake. I'll drop the custody suit." Victoria circled him. "Refuse, and I destroy Sarah so thoroughly she'll wish she'd never heard the name Harrington. That community center, I'll have it shut down, that house, tied up in lawsuits." Richard told Sarah everything. Her face went pale, then hardened. "It's true. I was 19, working 2 jobs. My manager was stealing, framing employees. I spent a night in jail, the most humiliating experience of my life." She looked at Richard. "You're going to take that deal?" "What? No. Yes. You're going to end things with me and keep Tommy. I won't be the reason you lose your son." "And what about us?" "Children are resilient." Tears filled her eyes, but her voice stayed firm. "I've been poor before, been shamed before. I'll survive, but you losing Tommy, that destroys you both." "You're asking me to give up?" "I'm asking you to be smart, to protect your child." Sarah touched his face. "I love you enough to let you go. That's real love. Sacrifice." As Richard drove away, Sarah collapsed, sobbing. Inside, Emma had heard everything from her window. She didn't understand all of it, but understood enough. The adults were giving up. Emma decided if grown-ups wouldn't fight, she would. That night, Emma called Victoria. "This is Emma Miller. I want to talk about my mama and Tommy's daddy." Victoria laughed coldly. "What could you possibly say to me? I know about the money you took from Tommy's trust fund, the money for his therapy that you spent on yourself." Silence. Then Victoria's voice, tight with rage. "You little brat. Tommy told me. He heard his daddy talking about how you stole from it. That's a crime, isn't it?" Emma hung up, hands shaking. She didn't know if it would work, but she wouldn't let Victoria destroy her family without a fight. Everything exploded the next morning. Victoria filed an emergency motion claiming Richard had sicked a child on her. She painted Emma as troubled, manipulative. Media picked it up instantly. 7-year-old porn in billionaire custody battle. Sarah was devastated. Emma was pulled from school as reporters camped outside. Marcus delivered worse news. They're filing charges against Sarah for witness intimidation through a minor. But Tommy overheard. That night, he snuck into his father's study and opened the locked drawer. Inside were letters, dozens from Victoria to Grace before she died. Letters filled with hatred, threats and references to the policy and once you're gone. Tommy took them to Emma's house at midnight. When Sarah opened the door to find Tommy there, her heart stopped. Richard arrived minutes later. When he saw what Tommy found, everything changed. The letters revealed Victoria hadn't just hated Grace, she'd wanted her dead. References to the policy were about life insurance, notes in Victoria's handwriting, experimental treatment in Mexico, unregulated clinic, no FDA oversight. Marcus read them, face white. Richard, Grace's final treatment, the one Victoria convinced her to try. What if it wasn't a failure? What if it was the plan? The room went silent. If Victoria convinced Grace to go to a dangerous clinic, and Grace had Victoria as Tommy's guardian if you were unfit, Richard, this could be murder. Tommy started crying. Aunt Victoria hurt my mommy? Emma held him as Richard looked at the letters, calculations about insurance and trust funds. If true, the custody battle wasn't about Tommy's welfare, it was about his trust fund. Marcus, I want investigators. The Mexico clinic, Grace's medical records, Victoria's finances, everything. But Sarah saw something else. In one letter, Victoria mentioned the Miller girl and her daughter, written 2 weeks before the storm. Richard, Victoria mentions us before Tommy got lost. She was watching us. This wasn't opportunistic. This was planned. What if Tommy's getting lost wasn't random? What if Victoria orchestrated it, expecting different results? Marcus, call a press conference tomorrow morning. We're ending this. Victoria's reign of terror was about to crash down, but she had one final card to play. The press conference was set for 10 a.m. Richard's team worked through the night building their case. Investigators flew to Mexico. Forensic accountants traced Victoria's finances. But at dawn, security burst in with devastating news. Victoria's gone, left the country 6 hours ago, private jet to the Cayman Islands. How? Someone tipped her off. But, sir, before she left, she called Child Protective Services. Sarah's blood turned to ice. What? She filed an emergency complaint claiming Emma was being used as a weapon, that Sarah was coaching her to lie. CPS is en route now. They have a court order to temporarily remove Emma. No, they can't take my daughter. Sarah raced home with Richard. 2 CPS vehicles were already there. A social worker stood with a police officer. Mrs. Miller, I have a court order for temporary removal of Emma Miller, pending evaluation. This is retaliation. Inside, Emma was packing. When Sarah burst in, Emma looked up with eyes too old for 7. It's okay, Mama. I know I have to go for a little while. No, baby, we'll fight. Mama, remember what you taught me. Sometimes we have to be brave when we're scared. I'll be brave, you be strong, then I'll come home, I promise. Sarah collapsed sobbing as Emma hugged her. As they led Emma out, she turned to Tommy. Take care of my mama while I'm gone. I'll protect her, like you protected me. The van drove away. Sarah stood keening. Richard held her as she collapsed. That night, Richard made calls, using every connection. But Sarah sat in Emma's room, holding her rabbit blanket. This is what I feared. That loving you would cost me everything. We'll get her back, Richard promised. Tommy crawled into Sarah's lap. Miss Sarah, Emma told me her daddy gave her that blanket. Even though he's gone, she feels him keeping her safe. Maybe Emma feels us fighting for her too. Sarah hugged Tommy and felt determination replace despair. Richard, I want Victoria found and dragged back to face what she's done. No more playing nice. Richard saw the warrior beneath Sarah's gentle exterior. Consider it done. Marcus arrived with news. The Mexican clinic had records. Grace's treatment had been actively harmful, drugs known to accelerate cancer. The doctor was paid $50,000 by an anonymous offshore account belonging to Victoria. We have her. It's murder. Premeditated murder. But Victoria was gone. Emma was in state custody, and tomorrow would either save them or destroy what was left. As Sarah lay in Emma's bed, Richard beside her, Tommy between them, Sarah whispered, "Thank you for fighting." "This is not how our story ends," Richard insisted. But Emma, in an unfamiliar foster home, was making her own plans. Tomorrow, everyone would learn what happened when you backed a 7-year-old angel into a corner. The final battle was about to begin. The press conference began at 10 a.m. sharp. Every major news outlet was there. Richard stood at the podium, Marcus beside him, Sarah and Tommy in the front row. 3 years ago, I lost my wife Grace to cancer. Yesterday, I learned she was murdered by her own sister, Victoria Ashford. Richard's voice was steel. Victoria convinced Grace to undergo experimental treatment at an unregulated Mexican clinic. Treatment she knew was lethal. She did this to access my son's trust fund through guardianship. The room erupted. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Richard presented evidence, the letters, financial records, testimony from the Mexican clinic staff who'd been paid to administer the deadly treatment. Victoria fled the country last night. But before she ran, she had my son's best friend, a 7-year-old girl named Emma Miller, removed from her home on false charges. A child who saved Tommy's life, who showed our family kindness when we needed it most. Sarah stood, her voice clear. I'm not ashamed of my past. I was arrested at 19 for a crime I didn't commit. I was poor, I struggled, but I raised my daughter to be kind, brave, and good. Victoria Ashford tried to use my past to destroy us because she couldn't stand seeing goodness rewarded. The crowd was silent, captivated. Then the courtroom doors burst open. A social worker rushed in, and beside her, Emma. "Mama!" Emma ran into Sarah's arms. The room exploded with camera flashes capturing the reunion. The social worker approached Richard. "Mr. Harrington, we conducted an emergency review overnight. The complaint against Mrs. Miller was fraudulent. Emma told us everything about Victoria's threats, the letters, what she overheard. That little girl testified like a veteran detective." She smiled. "You've got quite a fighter there." Emma had refused to stay quiet in the foster home. She'd told the social workers everything, demanded they investigate, even called the judge's office herself. At 7 years old, Emma Miller had dismantled Victoria's final attack through sheer determination. Marcus received a call, his face breaking into a smile. "Victoria's been detained in the Cayman Islands. Extradition is being processed. She'll face murder charges, fraud, child endangerment, everything." The hearing that followed was swift. The judge, seeing the evidence, immediately dismissed Victoria's custody petition and issued a warrant for her arrest. Tommy would stay with Richard. Emma was officially cleared, and Victoria Ashford's reign of terror was over. 6 months later, on a sunny May afternoon, something extraordinary happened. Richard and Sarah stood in the gardens of the Harrington estate, surrounded by friends, family, and everyone from Meadowbrook who'd supported them. Richard took Sarah's hand. "Sarah Miller, you saved my son, my heart and my soul. Will you marry me?" Sarah laughed through tears. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Emma and Tommy cheered, holding hands, jumping up and down. They'd be siblings now, the family they'd chosen that rainy October night. Dorothy Freeman smiled from her seat. Grace would have loved Sarah, loved seeing Tommy so happy. The community centre flourished. Emma returned to school, no longer bullied, but celebrated. Madison even apologized, her family humbled by their own struggles. Victoria was convicted on all charges: conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, attempted kidnapping. She'd spend the rest of her life in prison. But the real victory wasn't in the courtroom. It was in the life they built together. 1 year after that first storm, Emma and Tommy stood by the same window where Emma had first seen him crying in the rain. Now they were brother and sister, living in the house Richard had built for their blended family. Not the mansion, but a warm home in Meadowbrook where neighbors waved and friends visited. "You know what's funny?" Emma said. "If I hadn't looked out that window that night, none of this would have happened." "But you did look," Tommy said. "Because you're brave. You saved me." "We saved each other," Emma corrected. Sarah and Richard watched from the doorway, his arm around her waist, her head on his shoulder. "Grace would have loved her," Richard whispered. "I think she's watching," Sarah replied, "making sure we take care of her boy." Richard kissed Sarah's forehead. "We take care of each other now, all of us." That simple act of kindness, a 7-year-old girl bringing a lost boy in from the rain, had changed everything. It proved that goodness could triumph over evil, that love could bridge any divide, and that sometimes the smallest hands could move mountains. Emma Miller never forgot that rainy October night. Neither did Richard Harrington, because it was the night they all learned the most important lesson. Family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about who shows up in the storm, offers you shelter, and fights beside you when the world says you don't belong together. And as the sun set over Meadowbrook, casting golden light over their home, Emma knew her father was right. The special blanket with rabbits really did keep the bad dreams away. Because now, surrounded by love, there was nothing left to fear. The little girl who'd saved a lost boy had found her own way home. And in doing so, she'd saved them all.